Hey folks, welcome back to Dub Africa. This is Chris once more. Well, here we are nearly 3 weeks after the United States' general election for 2020. And what can we say other than the fourth estate has betrayed us and it must be captured? What's the only other explanation? The betrayal of the captured mainstream media, or as I prefer to call them, the fake stream, lamestream media. We have almost instantaneous denials by the media. Why is the media denying things? It's not their job to deny things. It's their job to report the facts and to investigate. That's a function of the media. Yet the Fourth Estate seems incapable and unwilling to do its job to investigate the facts or ask simple questions. Almost from the very moment that the questions began to arise the next morning after the general election, when votes poured in by the hundreds of thousands in states across the country, in states that Donald Trump was winning by wide margins, like Pennsylvania by 700,000 votes, Michigan by 200,000 or 300,000 votes, Wisconsin by 230,000 votes, and mysteriously, magically, after voting machines are shut down and counts are ceased, just a short time later, Joe Biden is ahead. Now, I'm not going to claim that it's impossible for that to happen, given the wide-scale use of mail-in ballots, although they weren't done in Wisconsin. So how does that happen in Wisconsin? But what I will say is that the media has failed miserably its job and clearly is beyond partisan, is disgraceful and undermining the integrity of our elections in this country. Simple questions to some of the very glaring things that should be asked by genuine journalists, actual news reporting would ask questions and go to places and get the answers to the following questions and many, many more. Are there in fact more registered voters than the total population in Clark County, Nevada? Is that a true statement? We've heard that repeated by people from the Trump campaign, and we've heard it reported on numerous websites and alternative media. It's a very simple thing to check for. I don't live in Nevada, so I can only find what's online. Why can't journalists go and ask that question? They're not interested in asking that question, which of course raises questions for objective folks like myself. Why will the media not ask this question? Why won't they go there? What about the report of overvoted precincts in Wisconsin and in Wayne County, Michigan? As much as 350%, as claimed by the former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell. Is that in fact the case? Have there been precincts in which there was overvoting by as much as 350%? And which precincts were they? Why is the media simply denying that this is the case instead of going to Wayne County and getting the data and then reporting to us? Why is the media ignoring the story and the fact that in Allegheny County and in Philadelphia County, Pennsylvania, election observers denied access to 682,000 ballots that were counted as mail-in ballots, when in fact those observers were lawful and permitted and approved by the state in advance? Yet those two counties criminally violated election law and kept observers away. Is in fact that true? And if so, why? If there's nothing to see here, why is the media ignoring this story? Get the facts and tell us. Name the polling stations where this did or did not occur. It's very simple. Why is the media hiding this story? What about the story of the day before the election? And I saw the quote on this. The Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, ostensibly elected to represent all 12 million of us who pay taxes and live here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, telling the country Donald Trump will never win Pennsylvania. That's not your job, bozo. Your job is to be the Attorney General and to uphold the rule of law, not undermine it. Why is that not a front page news story by the Fourth Estate? Well, there's a very good reason for it. It doesn't fit their narrative, and it doesn't suit their needs, so they refuse to cover the story. They'll spend 3 years telling lies and rushing to press and getting Pulitzers for fictional stories about Donald Trump and Russia collusion, which didn't occur, didn't exist. And even after the fact, after it's been proven it didn't exist, with an extensive, ridiculous investigation in which the administration turned over well over 1 million documents and was accused of not turning over documents in the fraudulent world of the fake stream Fourth Estate, they still persist with it. Why this constant nonsense about the Trump campaign delaying the election? What are they delaying? The first states are just about to announce their certification, including Georgia, which claims it's going to announce its certification today, I believe. So who's been delaying anything? No one's been delaying anything. They've simply been asking for a proper accounting of what happened. I don't hear the fake stream media complaining about Stacey Abrams' delusional claims that she won the governor's race 2 years ago. She's still whining about it. This vile leftist race-baiting race merchant, Stacey Abrams, still refused to accept that she lost an election by 40,000 votes 2 years ago. They still entertain the fantasies of Hillary Clinton, who is late, if just a few weeks before the election, walking around on her podcast, a specter of illegitimacy floats over the Trump presidency. No, it doesn't. The specter is your gas bag nonsense, Hillary Clinton. Just fade away and go away. You're not even fit to be president physically or mentally. Just disappear. Go away. No one's interested in your nonsense. But no news stories on that. Yet Donald Trump winning the election on election night, and the next morning suddenly he's losing by just enough in every state. Just absolutely crazy. Speaking of just enough in every state, the state of Pennsylvania, 4 million ballots came in, mail-in ballots, of 3 million requested. The state claims 3 million requested, 2.4 million came in. On election day, they reported 2.5 million total. So that means that 500,000 mail-in ballots didn't arrive and should not be counted because they're invalid, according to state election law, which, of course, the Attorney General and the Secretary of State both undermined our election by declaring 3 weeks before the election that they weren't going to follow the election law, that they would allow ballots to come in after the election without a postmark and without a signature that matched the voter's record on file. How is that even remotely legitimate? Why is that not a front page story by the media? That's fraud right there. No evidence of fraud. Why is the media running around carrying the water for the Democratic National Committee, declaring there is no fraud? There's no evidence of fraud. My goodness, there's evidence of fraud everywhere you look. And I'm not talking about Sidney Powell's outlandish claims, whether they're true or not, about Dominion software. I'm talking about voting irregularities and the press's inability and unwillingness to do their damn job. Folks, if you watch CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NBC, and for that matter these days, Faux News or fraudulent Fox News Network, you're not getting the whole story. Even Tucker Carlson has begun to fail the public. Someone I've promoted endlessly throughout this year is the most objective and concerned and dedicated and focused investigative journalist. Now, even his arrogant ego is getting in the way of reporting the news as he demands evidence because he's too lazy to go get the evidence on his own. That's his staff's job, to dig up the evidence, not to sit back in a comfy chair in a studio in New York City and throw barbs at Sidney Powell. If Sidney Powell has made false claims, it'll be proven. But it's not Tucker Carlson's job to claim that she's making false claims with no evidence to the contrary and pick a fight with her. You're failing. And I defended you again when you attacked her the first time, but you doubled down and attacked her again. Let her show her bare backside if she, in fact, is spewing nonsense. We will see. It's not your job to claim she's spewing nonsense. Prove it. Prove she's spewing nonsense. Prove the collusion she's got going on. That's what an investigative journalist does. So back to Pennsylvania. Of the 2.4 million ballots, let's go with the 2.4 million. We'll throw the 100,000 out for now that came in on election day. How does Joe Biden get 2 million of the 2.4 million mail-in ballots in the state of Pennsylvania? The Democrats crowed about the fact they had a 2-to-1 advantage in mail-in voting application or requests in states that actually requested it, in the 9 battleground states. The truth of the matter is only that's not the case. In those battleground states, only 8 of them actually had mail-in balloting. Wisconsin did not. And of the 8, Democrats had a lead, and 4 of them Republicans actually had a lead. The Democrats only had a 2-to-1 advantage in mail-in voter request in one single state, right here in Pennsylvania. They actually did. 67% of the mail-in ballot requests of the 3 million were actually by registered Democrats, and 1/3 by registered Republicans. So let's do this math. Donald Trump has a 700,000 vote lead as the polls closed, or the voting counts on election night. Suddenly, Joe Biden's up by over 100,000 votes now. How is this possible? Well, in order for that to happen, that means that Joe Biden had to take over 85% of all mail-in ballots. Now, Donald Trump has an approval rating amongst registered Republicans of 91%. So we're supposed to believe that Donald Trump only managed to get 14% million ballots. Less than 400,000 of those ballots. Is that what we're supposed to believe? That's just pure fiction. At least he should track with 30 to 35% in line with registered Republican request. Never mind the fact that we know that at Trump rallies, the massive rallies of 50,000, 57,000, 48, 49, 38,000 people showing up in the days leading up to the election for Trump's rallies. Those who requested to go to them because you're supposed to register to go to them, 20% of the people did identified as registered Democrats. So anecdotally, Trump should have gotten at least 90% of the registered Republicans here in Pennsylvania, right? So he should have got 380,000 of those votes. And he probably should have gotten 20% of the Democrat votes too. So that would be another, you see where this is going. Why aren't newspapers asking these questions? How in the world could you possibly think that a candidate could get 85% of a vote that did not campaign, that is as the day is long, and has clearly got mental faculty issues? Yet he gets 85% of the vote against a president who's done more for the black community, who's done more for America's economy than any president in decades. It just doesn't pass muster. Why is the media asking these questions? Why are they so hell-bent on declaring Joe Biden the presumptive president? And immediately, the moments after the election day, claiming that Donald Trump is fraudulently trying to overturn the results. He's not trying to overturn the results. We're trying to get to the truth of the matter here. And here's the most puzzling one of all. What about the polls? This is all part of a clear fourth estate collusion to create a narrative about this election. Two things in particular came in mind. Well, three. One, Trump's rallies were barely covered, if covered at all, by any of the media in the run-up to the election. Why? Is that in the interest of fairness because Joe Biden was too lazy to go out? Even when Joe Biden went out and had, crowds of a dozen or two or 120 people showing up at a car rally, even Barack Hussein Obama couldn't draw more than a couple hundred flies to his rallies in Florida. Even when they went out and campaigned briefly just before the election because Biden was getting his tail kicked and Trump was surging past him all over the country, even in the midst of that, they still didn't cover Trump rallies. So it can't be a question of objectivity and fairness of not covering one candidate and only covering the other. If one candidate chooses to hide in his bunker in his basement for months on end, it's not the other candidate's fault. That candidate is still newsworthy. Yet Trump's rallies were barely touched. Yet they gave him billions of dollars free advertising when he was not a threat, and they found him comical in the presidential primaries back in 2015, 2016. But the buyer's remorse, the media, simply did not cover Trump rallies. Nonetheless, alternative media like Right Side Broadcasting wound up with audiences habitually over 100,000 streaming through YouTube, and had a recent audience of 1.3 million for something that happened online. Unbelievable. While the mainstream media, the fake stream, lamestream media, 1.3 million people watching a YouTube video on a live broadcast. CNN's lucky if it can get 400, 500,000 people watching its main commentators in prime time. That's just astounding. So why did they not cover Trump? This was news. And two more issues about this. Number one, why did the mainstream media perpetuate these fraudulent polls, including spitting all over the pages and telling everybody just 10 days before the election that Donald Trump is dead in the water. Joe Biden has a 17-point lead. A 17-point lead, 57 to 40 is the vote total for Joe Biden. What fantasy world do they live in? They told us repeatedly this would be a blue wave, that this would be the Republicans get killed in this election, that Trump was he was going to be beaten in a landslide by Joe Biden. Never mind the fact that the claim was simply not credible on the face of it, and it left all kinds of questions unanswered. It proved, even if there isn't fraud, that it was patently false. The only place where Joe Biden demonstrably beat Donald Trump, assuming the vote is legitimate, is California, New York, and the usual blue blood, leftist, left and right coast strongholds. Everywhere else, it wasn't even remotely a huge beatdown at all. In fact, Donald Trump swamped Joe Biden repeatedly in place after place after place. Not to mention the fact that in an election year in which an incumbent president, and the power of incumbency is very powerful, folks, but not the first time an incumbent president's lost, but the year in which the incumbent president lost an election, according to the media, not the Electoral College, not yet anyway. According to the media, the incumbent president lost Republicans gain seats in the House of Representatives. How is that possible? In fact, right now there are several seats in dispute and about 8 races yet to be called. It's entirely possible that Republicans can surge up if some of those elections that have been called by the media are actually overturned by actual vote counts and recounts in jurisdictions where that's necessary. So this isn't over yet in the House of Representatives, and even if it is over, the Republicans have surged up and closed the gap. Where's the blue wave? How do the Republicans gain seats? Not a single Republican who stood for re-election, not a single incumbent Republican in the House of Representatives lost their race. They all won, every single one. You can't say that Democrats, many lost their seats. Now, there were seats lost by Republicans, but there are seats in which there was no incumbent standing. They owned the seat previously. Someone stepped aside, retired, or left government service, and a new candidate stood for it. But not a single Republican in the House of Representatives lost the election. How is that even possible? Why is the press asking questions about that? Why aren't they making a lot of hay about that? That's a serious news story, and also a major problem for the Democratic Party. If any of their votes defect on any bills, they're in trouble in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, not only in a year in which the Republicans were incredibly vulnerable, and they told us endlessly that Susan Collins and South Carolina's Lindsey Graham were going to lose, that they were going to lose. There's no question about it. They will lose this election. They're dead in the water. Lindsey Graham's opponent spent millions and millions of dollars to defeat him. Not only was Lindsey Graham not defeated, but he crushed his opponent. It wasn't even remotely close. Susan Collins, it appeared to be close, but as all the votes came in, she widened her lead and won easily in that state as well. The only races that were turned were in Colorado, in which Hickenlooper, the failed Democratic presidential candidate, ran for Senate and knocked out Cory Gardner in a strange state to begin with, a state that approves of illicit drugs as being part of their main industry. And in Arizona was the other case, Martha McSally, who was never particularly popular in the state and who has made herself a close ally of Trump, but many people don't really believe her bona fides. Arizona's election results are questionable too, and they will have to be looked at. So we don't even know if Martha McSally generally lost that election, but it appears she did. Whereas Donald Trump, who was down by 360,000 votes, with 82% of the vote counted, wound up just less than 10,000 votes apart as the votes came in. And we don't even know the total after military absentee ballots are counted. So, folks, why is the media not asking these questions? Why are they rushing instantly without doing any investigation, without even following through on the claims that are made by the Trump campaign and by others? Why don't they follow through and ask questions? That's what journalists do. They ask questions, they investigate, they go to places, and they collect data, and they report on the data. You don't get clowns like Jenna Fisher, what's her name? Kristen Fisher is claiming, well, nothing but lies and easily refuted. No, it's not lies and easily refuted. You didn't refute jack. You're a fake journalist on a fake news network, fraudulent Fox News, disgraceful conduct of Fox News. I found them unpalatable when they became the Trump super PAC. I wanted to vomit retch every time everything was Trump rah-rah all the time. That wasn't objective either, and I said so in 2015, 2016. Could only start watching that network again in 2017, 2018. And now it's unwatchable once again. Arthel Neville. Seriously? Disgraceful conduct last weekend in your interview with Tim Ryan. Neil Cavuto interrupting the White House press secretary. Whoa. She's just making outlandish claims here. I can't countenance this. I can't continue with this unless she can provide more information. We're going to break away from this now. Excuse me? Who are you, Neil Cavuto, to decide what we get to hear and don't hear? Well, apparently you are somebody in a network that none of us want to watch anymore. So good luck with your advertising. I don't think even Mike Lindell is going to keep touting his My Pillows on your network with the fraud that you're perpetuating on that network. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. No objective journalism whatsoever. The only place you had left that was objective journalism at this stage was Tucker Carlson. And instead of investigating Sidney Powell's claims, he demands that she give him the evidence that she needs to present in court. Well, that's not journalism. And having a childish argument because you didn't get your answers. Folks, the Fourth Estate has betrayed this nation and has betrayed the world, all in an inexorable march towards leftist totalitarian fascism. The mainstream media doesn't even ask basic questions about the efficacy of wearing masks. There's no questions about why Pfizer waited until after the election to announce that it had a vaccine which it claims is 94% effective. or that Moderna did the same thing after the election. Why? When they knew fully a full month before this that they were at this stage. They're no further along now than they were a month ago. They're just waiting for government approval, which they were waiting for a month ago. Why didn't they announce this before the election? Why? To sabotage Donald Trump's chance for re-election. That's why. Why is the media not covering that story or asking questions of executives at Moderna and Pfizer? Why did you wait until now? Those are legitimate questions, but we in the public don't know the answer because these lazy, feckless jackasses that purport to be journalists are behaving in this fashion. It's disgraceful, folks. It's disgraceful. Why must people get their news from other sources, from objective reporters? Well, folks, if you're not a subscriber to Chris White Africa, this is a bit of a long video, but there's a lot of data I had to unpack here and ask some questions that the media doesn't bother asking. Anyway, if you're not a subscriber, take a moment and become a subscriber by pushing that button right down there. It says subscription. And be sure to toggle the bell icon to get notified of updates. And if you want to leave a comment, please leave a comment. If it's abusive, it will get deleted. And you might be the subject of a future abusive comments video. And finally, smash the like button because likes drive viewership. Thank you so much for your time and your patronage. God bless. Have a good day. And start questioning the fourth estate. Start demanding that they give you answers. Or simply stop patronizing their broadcast on the radio, on television, on cable, and stop buying the newspapers and magazines because they're just rags. They don't take the time to ask genuine questions. Instead, they push opinions, they push views, and they push narratives. That's not the role of a news organization. Not at all, folks. Take care.